Patreon.com/Taylor Durden. What's the deal? Yeah, people might be barbecuing or some shit. It's Father's Day, I think, too, right? Yeah. It's funny how Father's Day is not universal. You would think it'd be the same day in the whole world, I guess, or maybe you wouldn't. But yeah, yeah. I will have somebody on with me in a second here, so I'm just waiting for a few people to jump on, and then I can just get rolling. But we know it's gonna take 10 minutes just for me to accept the the join request. So it's gonna be a hassle. Every time we do, I do a joint live. Instagram always gives me fits, but until we get there, I guess I just talk about the obvious thing. That I think everybody's looking at the whole world. It's crazy how like the whole world can watch it. You be always wondering like how much is AI, right? Um, or like if it's not AI, how staged is it? And yeah, I mean that's why like I posted in in the caption of the one video, like they had to know that the retaliation was coming from Iran. Yeah, isn't real. It's funny, but now like they had to know that the retaliation from Iran was coming. I mean, Bibi leaves the country and goes to Greece the next day, and yeah, man. I mean, it just doesn't. It just looks like I wouldn't be surprised. A lot of people wouldn't be surprised if it's all just a stage. One way or another, for the theater of war. And people do it. War is theater, but people do get caught up in it because it's like a mass possession, like a mass fear possession that causes people to, kill and die for shit they really otherwise they wouldn't if they were of sound mind and they weren't afraid. So at this point, it's just like any world war, World War One. They had a staged event, the sinking of the Lusitania, to get us into World War One. Because before that, America wasn't involved in the war. I guess vicariously America was involved, like by shipping ammunitions to the Allies in World War One. But then, the sinking of the Lusitania, which was a staged event, that got us into World War One. And then, obviously World War Two, Pearl Harbor was a staged event. They either orchestrated the attack or they let the attack happen because they had already cracked the Japanese the code they were using for signals. So they already knew what the Japanese were going to attack Pearl Harbor, or is it a total fake, and they orchestrated it with the Japanese through this process of it's like a Hegelian dialectic, you know what I mean? The Japanese end up having more debt owed to them from America than even China. They become the world's largest car manufacturer, and supposedly, these bombs were dropped on their cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and those cities they're still alive and bustling today, but people don't even realize like the bombing of Tokyo was a bigger bombing, even though it was a campaign over like a couple of days. If you show people the firebombing of Tokyo, which had more casualties than Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and it was just a typical bombing using the same airplane that they used supposedly to drop the so-called nuclear bomb. So the biggest mass casualty air raid of all time is not Hiroshima or Nagasaki. It's Tokyo. Firebombing of Tokyo. So you show people pictures of Tokyo and you're like, this is Hiroshima or this is Nagasaki. They wouldn't know the difference, you know. And I mean, not time, but the news traveled a little slower than obviously. It's not like they could just, you know, have their phones out and it's on X in a few minutes. Now it's at that time it was you know, I feel like it's just easier to fix stuff, and then you have a government that's complicit. Like, you know, they bombed Pearl Harbor. There were only old ships in the harbor. They had moved all the new ships out. They took the L on purpose so that they could get America into the war. Then they test this bomb, and yeah, I mean, anybody that looks into like why nukes are a hoax or why nukes are not real, I mean, you can quickly see like through the video evidence, it's not much different than the moon landing. You look at the moon landing, you're like, this is a farce. This is obviously BS. And then you look at the moon landing, you're like, okay, this is all digital. There's no actual raw film. Like this, the telemetry data is gone, and they don't know how to build the technology to go back supposedly, but they had it in 1969. It's like the same thing. 1945, they had nukes supposedly, and as you look at the videos of the nukes, you can see all these doctored videos. You know, that it's just shitty editing. But at the time, you would probably buy it. You know, 1945, 46. You know, through the testings of the 40s and 50s or whatever. Like, you know, you would maybe buy that this thing exists, and so it's like not really much different. Like the process with with Hitler, you know, and Operation Paperclip, where all the Nazi scientists that were in West Germany, they all, you know, moved to America, and they, you know, like Werner von Braun, they started NASA, and then the ones in the East all went to Russia. And Russia was the greatest ally of America and the UK during World War II. So, because Russia at the time was controlled by the Bolsheviks, Trotsky, you know, they're mostly, you know, you're being ran by fake Jews in Russia, and it's the same thing. Like across the West at this time is being completely captured by fake Jews. So it's not much different than the theme in Japan. If you look at Japan, 100 years before 1945, it's a very brown country. You know, you have more browning there. You know what I mean? It just got more. It's just as pale or more pale than anywhere on Earth. So you have pretty much the same theme as like this area has been colonized by a parasite. Same thing with Russia. They got colonized by a parasite. All of Western Europe. They blew up a lot of the history by blowing up the buildings. You know, anybody that is into so-called Tartarian architecture or Antiquitech, that, you know, they know. They left some buildings conveniently, the Ulm Minster, the Cologne Minster, but Dresden is completely destroyed. Most of Cologne is destroyed except for the Cologne Minster. So it all seems like pretty much like a stage, like the same way you got all these fires in the late 1800s in America, which were actually just dynamite. You know, the fire of Baltimore, San Francisco, Chicago fire. All these cities were exploded and then torn down to get rid of all the history through the Antiquitech of the buildings. They had to get rid of that. And that, you know, the wars were giant meat grinders of mass possession, where you're getting rid of the connection to dark Europe. You're getting rid of the quadroons, the octoroons, and whatever mulattoes that remain in Russia and, you know, all throughout Europe. You know, you're killing off the connection to the darkness, you know, the real Europeans. So, you know, you go back 100 years, 200 years, Europe is swarthy. Same thing with Japan. And so I don't really look at it like Germany lost. I feel like they just merged with the U.S. through Operation Paperclip and about another means. And same thing with Japan. I really don't think there was any real opposition there. Um, just looking at the outcome, who stands to gain? What is it, Kibono, right? So, just looking at that, I really just think that Israel is the same type of thing. The area has been colonized, and you have a small amount of Shemites and Hamites that would be the people that could live in that area or that would be native to that area, and then the rest are just Turkic and other forms of mute in the area, and Mamluks, you know what I mean, and you got basically just like Japhethites posing as Shemites. I mean, there's some like again, Israel. It does have a population of so-called Arabs, and they do have a population of Ethiopians, which is just Edomites, and Edom is still Shem, so there's still some Shemites in there, but it's by and large the Knesset is controlled. Their government is the Knesset, their governing body is the Knesset is by and large controlled by a colonizing parasite. So you look at it like Nick Fuentes would say, like the tail's wagging the dog. Israel's controlling America, and but it's like really just like one colonial one parasite that's taking over the world. It has a bunch of different factions, a bunch of different names. It's like Coca-Cola has a lot of little companies they own. They own Chipotle. You look at Chipotle, you don't think like, oh, this is Coca-Cola. I'm going into a Coca-Cola store, but it's actually one entity. So it's the same thing, really, whether it be United States of America or whatever. I mean, you're dealing with like a parasite hive that has taken over the world through various hosts, and some of them have different faces and whatnot, but ultimately they're a hive mind that works underneath this parasite umbrella. So, and it's the same thing with Iran. Like Iran has a population. There's Jews in Iran. They have a population of some melanated peoples that are from the area. That's the actual real Iranians. But like, 'cause if you look at like Darius the Great and people like that, depictions of the old Iranians, like most of the Iranians you see today are not that, and they might be partly mixed with that from generations back, but most of them today are not that. So when you look at the structure of Iran, where Shia Muslims, they believe that the governors or the controllers or leaders of a country should be directly descended from Muhammad. So the leaders are supposedly like selectively bred from Muhammad, and to me that's probably not much different than you look at Europe. Europe is, whether it be Spain, whether it be Switzerland, whether it be the Holy Roman Empire, which took over Italy, and if you go back, like it's right around it's in the middle of the early 1500s. The Swiss Guard, they made the deal to protect the Pope, I think like 1505, I think, and then 20 years later, the Habsburg dynasty assumes power in the Holy Roman Empire, and the Habsburgs are like, they're related to the modern day royal family of all over Europe, because they interbred, and the Archduke Ferdinand and all of them, they're all related to the Habsburgs. And if you know World War I, it was started when Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated. But it's going all the way back. The Habsburg Castle, the first one supposedly, is in Argyle, Switzerland. And you look at the Habsburgs, you're like, man, this is an inbred, mutated. This is a mutant family. How did they have control over Spain? How are the Castillos really not different from the Habsburgs? They're all related. They're all cousins. They're all inbred cousins. It's not much different than anywhere in the world. Like I said, like in Iran, you have a selectively bred group. Same thing throughout the Ottoman Empire. Like it was, you have a selectively bred leadership. And I mean, I think even today in much of the Arab world, a lot of people are married to their first cousins, or what's so-called Arab world, because these people are not Arabs, But I'm just saying all this to say, like, you look at it like early 1500s, the Habsburgs take over. The Pope gets fucking kidnapped and held at ransom for 400,000 gold coins on some gangster shit. And from that point on, the Holy Roman Empire, which wasn't holy or Roman or really kind of an empire, it was more so just like a bloodline that had hijacked most of Europe. They take over all the libraries in Rome, because at that point that's kind of like the beginning of the end. But you got to look at the timeline correctly. Like I don't know, like 1500 is really 500 because they're injecting 1,000 years of fake history into the timeline. And so as the Dark Ages is happening from the fall of Rome in what so-called 1476, that's really 476. Which is 600 years ago, really, because we're not in 2025, we're really in 1025. So you go back 500 years, the Habsburgs, they get foisted up to be this ruling class throughout Europe. And you're like, how the fuck is this mutant family in control of anything? They can't even fucking close their mouth in their pictures. They're so fucking inbred, But they were placed there to deflect attention from their, they're like front office people being controlled by people in the so-called shadows, and so they're controlled by melanated peoples that took over the area, and they were using their slaves to fight the other melanated people's slaves until they could penetrate and take over Europe and the world. And that's why you have this mutant ruling class. And you're like, how the fuck these people are dumb? How could they ever take anything over? And it's like, no, they've been bred selectively to stay in these power positions like lapdogs. Because if they bred out of it, like Princess Diana was attempting to, you get murdered. Because they don't want people to have any shred of soul. So these programs, these simulants, these mutants, they're bred with each other so that they will never break protocol, because they'll be designed like they're like an organic AI. They'll be designed to only be able to have certain thoughts occur to them and certain behaviors. And just throughout the world, it's been done in different camps. So you look at it like these Persians, these is Mamluks or whatever. These is Greeks, the Hellenistics or whatever, the Hellenes. These are Romans. These is whatever. These are all like pretty much camps of like mutant farms that have like a brand. Whether you call them Iranians or Persians, you call them so-called Arabs or Turkic or so-called white people of Europe. These is all mutant brands. Like they were like, look, we're coming out with a new AI. Basically, like we got a generation of AI that we're creating from our camp over here, and we're going to use them to keep yours at bay. It's like a drone war. It's like the original drone warfare, and it's just been going on ever since. And people get caught up in the meat grinder, and things are just constantly resetting because it's not stable. And you need to just have like a constant sacrifice every now and again to grease the skids, to oil the system, or the system will collapse. So when you're looking at the current conflict, it sucks. I feel like the kind of hatred and vitriol that the mutants have created to where people have become what they condemn, where they're like cheering on bombing. I mean, it's going to be collateral damage. It's going to be babies getting killed. It would be if regime change happened in Iran. You're looking at 3 million people died when they overthrew Saddam Hussein. Civilians, 3 million people in Iraq died. Many Christians, many different types of people of all walks of life died because when you destabilize the country and you take out the leadership, you get a power vacuum, and then you have warring gangs, just like in Libya. You have just warring gangs trying to jostling for position, and so people get caught up in that, and they either join. It's like a massive Bloods and Crips thing, and hundreds of thousands of people die. And if there's regime change in Iran, there will be millions of dead civilians. That's for one. There will be hundreds of thousands of troops needed to be deployed. We're talking about like 500,000. That would be like half of America's active duty troops, which would leave America ass naked in the rest of the world if they have to expend that much. If there's like another event, like I said before, like Pearl Harbor, which was fake, like the sinking of the Lusitania, which was fake. These are all staged events to incite the mass possession through the fear, So World War One, sinking of Lusitania is fake. That gets us into World War One. Pearl Harbor is a fake event, a staged event to get people to really go and die for this shit. That's World War Two. Then you have the Korean War after that, which was another staged event because America put the communists in power. They ran Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists out of China. So then Mao Zedong takes over in 49. And then they fuel the war in the Chinese, the Han Chinese, the Khan, the Canaanites. They fuel the war in Korea. And then America splits Korea in half, and they get the South. And, tens of thousands of people died in the Korean War, which was just pointless, which was just part of just carving things up, even further. Because North Korea, again, is a fake. It's just like Israel. It's not a real country. It's just a propped up zone. It's fake. You know what I mean? Like the whole North Korea, that's fake. It's not a real country. It's like part of the theater of the simulation. You know what I mean? Just like Israel's not really a real country. So like North Korea having nukes, and North Korea, they're just completely backed by China, which is a creation of, even call it the Rothschilds or what have you, the whole. If you look at the history of China, then you realize, like, you got the French Connection. They were moving the dope with the China, the Opium Wars. They're moving the dope out of China. And, with the whole West, it's like these separate names for the French and Germans and shit like that. But a lot of these people are not French, they're not German, because they're just mutants that were a slave class that had an uprising. And took, they got more. They never took over, but they got more power than they're designed to have. You know what I mean? But it's like it's ultimately by design to create instability, to cut off the flow of information and erase the history further. So, you got again, World War One's fake, World War Two's fake, Korean War's fake. Then you got Vietnam, the Gulf of Tonkin. Another fake event that has been admitted. This is a fake event. America was never attacked in the Gulf of Tonkin, and that was the event that we used as a pretext, I don't even want to say we, that the military-industrial complex used to go to war in Vietnam. Well, again, which was just some more blood and treasure being lost for nothing. You had a draft that was not real, that people got mass possessed, that they needed. They were like, oh, I'm running. If I don't go into the draft, then I'll be a draft dodger. I'll go to jail. Like, they arrested Muhammad Ali, to make a public spectacle of it, yada, yada, yada. So people went and died in that war by the thousands. And America spent hundreds of millions of dollars fighting with the Southern Vietnamese, against the Viet Cong. So, again, it's another fake war, and we can just go down the line of fake wars, You could have America funding the Mujahideen to fight Russia Which again, I feel like the whole shit during the Cold War is just that's the Cold War was just a stage so that people could divvy up the world and sell arms and get people to murder each other and further separate different areas. It's the split between Pakistan and India in the 40s too. They became two countries at the same time as Israel became a country, and you just look at it like, man, the biggest base in the Middle East is in Qatar. The biggest American base is in Qatar. And so you have all these people saying like, it's Qatar. Qatar is giving propaganda and so that, against Israel and against the Jews or whatever. But it's like the biggest base for the Americans is in Qatar, it's directly across the Persian Gulf, right across from Iran, and it's being used as a means to, supposedly intercept the missiles that are coming into Israel and a fuel up area for the Americans and the British and all that. And like a kind of like a stopgap between Iran and the rest of the region. So, and then you got another massive American base in Pakistan. And then you look at the logic and you're like, Pakistan is right next to fucking Iran. Supposedly they have nukes, these nukes, right, that don't exist. But Iran's not allowed to have nukes. Pakistan doesn't recognize Israel. So why is it okay for Pakistan to have hundreds of nukes and not recognize Israel and be directly next door to Iran? So it's all a stage that is being set to funnel people into a meat grinder, and they're setting up whatever the next fake event is. Obviously, you had in the early 80s, Iraq was bombing. They had a war with Israel, and then you got Desert Storm by Bush, and then that was all bullshit. A bunch of people got caught up in the meat grinder there and got poisoned, and then you get, of course, 9/11 orchestrated by the same people, so-called Zionists, so-called Jews, and so then you get a $10 trillion war on terror. And the Taliban is stronger than it's ever been today. Iraq is still destabilized. It's still split now. They got Kurdistan in the north. So it's kind of like two countries now. But you look at Iraq and you're like, Iraq is mostly flat. They sent 200,000 troops in. It took years to get Saddam out. 3 million Iraqis died. You're talking about anywhere from 4 to 6 trillion spent on the war. Nothing was accomplished. Other than, because again, you had Netanyahu back then saying, oh, Iraq's got weapons of mass destruction, you got to go in. Because Saddam was shooting missiles at Israel, so they were like, look, they can hit us with a nuke because they can reach us with their missiles. So you should go in because they got weapons of mass destruction. And that puts the whole region at risk. And it's the same song. They're playing the same song. And you're just watching it play out again. And you're just like, wow, this is the same shit. And there's going to be another event that's going to get America to try to galvanize America, because you got so much shit going on at once. It's kind of the same shit. When Vietnam was starting, World War One, you had after the Federal Reserve is created and America gets bankrupted, it's like this war has to follow that because it's to reset. And then World War Two, you're coming out of the Great Depression. And there's this next reset that has to happen. So it's just like, again, we're facing another reset. Like I guess you could say manufactured reset. That kind of probably butts up with a natural reset as well. Because again, it's like these natural ebbs and flows of life that the parasite is privy to, and then they try to move around it to create a desired outcome to where they can prolong their existence. So you got inbred Iran, inbred Israel, inbred Saudi Arabia, inbred all wherever. All these mutant camps. So when they attacked Iran, they had to know that Iran was going to hit back. And they had to know like the French and the UK and the Americans would helping intercepting the missiles and protect them. So they had this hedge, and they had to know, like, all right, well, we're going to attack, and I have this meeting. If you're Netanyahu, you have this meeting to go to Greece at this perfect time. This guy's probably on a Greek island, at the perfect time of year to be there. Honestly, I wouldn't mind being there. So he goes there while his country's being bombed, and it all just seems like a simulation. Like whether Iran is being used as a puppet, or they knowingly at the top, the leadership knows like this is all fake, and we're using it to reset the global currency and to redraw the lines on the map. It doesn't really make a difference. The objective outcome is the same whether they know it or not. So again, Iran was overthrown by the U.S. in the 50s when they funded Kermit Roosevelt and the Americans. They did a coup on Iran in the 50s to undermine the Shah, because there was good relations between the Persians and the Americans for years, But they wanted radical Islam. They wanted dirt floors. They wanted oppression. They wanted to have this staunch difference between the Islamic world and the so-called civilized world or whatever. So they could use it as a propaganda tool. And so in the 50s, they put the extremists, the mullahs, would turn into the Ayatollah, and now the Muslim, the Shia leadership that's there now, they're put in position by the West. I don't always want to say America, because it's just the West. It's just like the Western faction of the Western mutant branch of the West India Company kind of, and so they were put into position. Everybody's been pretty much put in their roles, and we're all pretty much just waiting for the next event that's going to try to make people forget about the fact that, supposedly you're going to get a tariff war, you're going to get mass deportations, you were going to get low gas prices, you were going to get low food prices, you were going to get a health secretary, because RFK heads up HHS, the Health and Human Services, but he's Israel first as well. You can see the videos with him and Rabbi Shmuley. And so he said that anti-Semitism is a epidemic, so he's dead. He's done. I mean metaphorically, obviously. I don't mean like I want somebody to hurt him. I'm just saying like he's just a host. And they're all hosts. All been put in position, and they all compartmentalized, and whether they know it or not, they're just puppets. I think some do know it, but a lot of the time they're compartmentalized in such a way that make them feel like they actually have power, and that allows them to be really good hosts. Because slavery isn't really possible if you know you're a slave. It starts to unravel. So I think they do think that a lot of them think that they have power, when they are just puppets. And, or they think that they're working with something that's very powerful. Like they're part of a machine that is bigger than them, and they'll be taken care of, and, etc. So Israel attacks Iran. It's supposedly really precise, and they take these people out, and you can see they're just hitting like corner offices of buildings instead of blowing them up. So it lets you know like why they're so heavy-handed in Gaza. It's they're doing that on purpose. The flattening that, because like Trump said, America's gonna take Gaza. Him saying that lets you know that there's no separation between Israel. It's the United States of Israel, really, if you can even really call it that. It's the United States of fake ups, the fake Jacobites, and we're all pretty much just waiting for that next event to set it off, because Iran's talking about anybody that's helping to block the missiles is now a target. Supposedly they said that. I don't know. The first thing in war to die is the truth, And the basis of all warfare is deception. So how much of this shit is a lie, and then you just set it up to where people, you do the heavy lifting with the propaganda, and then people carry out your agenda for you through mass possession and fear. Same thing. And so how much of it is really real? I think there's real consequences, but I think that it's not the root causes, or the source of the agenda is not, it's not authentic. So everybody's being used like pawn pieces. And it's kind of hard not to, like, any way you engage with it, you know what I mean? You show people that, look, this is bombing, this is what's happening, this was happening in Gaza or whatever. And so much shit is like, damn, we're doing the propaganda almost for them. You know, we show them the bombings coming in, we show people Gaza, and it tugs at people's heartstrings. And I do think it's a tragedy, a lot of the shit that's happening, and I definitely don't like what the fake Jews have done around the world. But at the same time, you don't want to become what you condemn. So, that's the part that's troubling, when you see people like cheering bombing and shit like that, because you're like, damn, we're becoming, now the parasite, it's like an identity theft. Like, it's a sleight of hand. Like, now you are the parasite. You don't even realize. At this point, you've already merged with it. At this point, wow, once you start to go into that line of thinking, and that feeding that aggression and fear, kind of, that makes a person think like that or promote those type of things, it's a tough thing to watch, I mean, especially, even for myself personally, I've been raised to not fuck with fake Jews, I've been raised to be wary of them and to identify who they are, whether they be crypto Jews that know they're crypto Jews, or crypto Jews that are oblivious, crypto fake Jews, you know what I mean? You're surrounded, really. At least 1 out of every 5 people is partly crypto Jew or a crypto Jew themselves. Because if you're looking at like the Y chromosome, it's largely unchanged from father to son. Another reason why I was pointing out the Clyde Perry, or also known as Albert Perry thing, with the A00 Y chromosome group, I was pointing that out. UBTV did a great, Brandon T, Uriah Brandon, UBTV or whatever. He did a great. He has a lot of documentaries that are just spot on, that the world needs to see. But he put something together about the A00 Y chromosome, and you're looking at, like, okay, this is the oldest Y chromosome. This is the genetic atom. This is the oldest Y chromosome that's available to us today, and it comes from the Americas. It's in small populations in West Africa, because West Africans, people in general, come from the Americas, and then it spread east from the West. However you want to look at it, whether you want to say it's over the Bering Strait. My mom instilled this shit into me real young, so it never bothered me when the idea was delivered to me, that America is the fatherland. She was like, man, the footsteps, how do they know the footsteps, don't go both ways? As far as like people migrating from America into Asia, or Asia into America. And I was like, yeah, you're right. This is instilled in me very young, and don't trust the fake Jews. We're surrounded. They're everywhere. They're embedded. All these teachers, all these principals, whether you want to call it bankers or whatever, like, all these people in society, she pointed out, she realized, that's what that is right there. That's what you're dealing with. Just that adversarial energy. You have pretty much watched them. You don't want to become them. And this is, like, it becomes hard to not hate them. It's a challenge. It's easy if you maintain your true identity, but it's a challenge to not get caught up in becoming what they are, and the way they treat others. That's the true loss once you start to behave like them, and that's kind of where we're at, and that's why world war, I feel like, is very possible. Um, there's a Tao Te Ching verse when it was saying like, as soon as you think your enemy's evil, you basically already lost. If you have to see your enemy as a shadow of yourself. So the moment that you start to see the enemy as a demon or as evil, that's when you've already lost, because you're no longer you're not allowing yourself to control the adversary within you. And you see that around the world. Everybody's looking for someone to blame. And as much as I want to be like, yeah, the fake Jews did this, the fake Jews did that, but you look, okay, this is the front office people. These aren't even the actual controllers. These are the pawns that are very vain, and they like to, to vex their spirit and act like they control shit, and because they feel like they're part of a hierarchy that's in control, whether it's through the synagogue of Satan and Satan itself or what have you. One way or another, they vex their spirit and they feel like they're chosen, or whether by God or by Satan, and they get hegemony in this world, and it's exactly what you don't want to become. But it's easy to keep them in that vain state. Anybody like that. You look at Iran, the leadership is like, we descend from Muhammad. We're basically granted by God this ability to rule or lead. And it's not really any different across the board. That's the situation we're in. So we're all pretty much just waiting for what they're going to try to pull. And I don't know. It's almost like being reactionary. I don't know if that's going to help anything. It's like we're all watching it happen. There was people probably when 9/11 was unfolding. You had Alex Jones even saying it was going to happen. You had people saying like, the attack is imminent, da 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 da. So there was people then at that time that was like, the fake Jews, the Zionists, they're going to attack and they're going to blame it on whoever, and we're going to go to war, and it's going to be a bunch of undocumentable adjustments, trillions in money lost at the Pentagon, and they're going to sweep that under the rug under this war. It was like a mini reset in 2001. You look at Donald Rumsfeld the day before, they were like, yeah, Pentagon lost trillions of dollars, we don't know where it went. And you get the Patriot Act and and the war on terror and all the bullshit that follows that, and you're like, oh, okay, it's all a stage, but people do really get caught up in it, and we do really hurt each other, and we become the enemies that we condemn. And meanwhile, the parasite's just like intense hand rubbing, and that's what everybody is becoming. We're becoming what we hate. And that's why I feel like we could try to get the word out. You could try to tell people, but it's almost like, I don't know if being reactionary is even going to do anything. I think what's going to happen is what's going to happen. We should just control what we can on an individual level and try to establish or do our best at establishing some sort of community and parallel infrastructure for when power goes out and, war gets to the point where supply chain is even more tightened, and the propaganda gets more and more thick. Just keep the channels of communication there one way or another, to where your people know where to go in the event of a power outage or loss of communications. And everybody's moving on the same page so that we can endure the reset. Because I don't know at this point, there's so much momentum, I don't know if you can really stop it. I don't know. As much, because like you look at it like every time there's this phase of people that are supposed to be waking up. People are waking up. People are waking up to the deep state. People are fucking, whatever. All of that shit is co-opted. It's like we give you a hero, we'll give you a villain, will give you this false traction, and people eat that shit up. So you look at it like a lot of people will never leave Trump. I mean, half his base does not want war, so it's going to fracture them. But if there's some type of attack in America from a so-called immigrant, what have you, who knows how that would galvanize the base. They're like, all right, well, we need to go to war. We're going to be even promised even more deportations or whatever they're going to promise through the process of war. The propaganda is going to get even more thick. But a lot of people will just never let it go. They'll never let QAnon go. They'll never let Trump go. They'll, whatever. It's plenty of shit that people will never let go. And it's not a real, I don't want to say awakening. It is a renaissance because renaissance means rebirth. It's like the rebirth of the parasite. Like the parasite is positioning itself, embedding itself in enough people to where when the reset happens, there will be enough people that endure it that are hosts for the parasite to where when the chain of events loops around again, the parasite cycle is always a loop. When that happens again, you'll have enough hosts to where the parasite can flourish again and bring us right back to the same old bullshit. And every time it happens, the remnant becomes more fragmented. In the beginning, the remnant was like it's all original people. They can get back, hit the ground running. There's enough knowledge preserved. They can establish civilization again. Boom. So then you reset again. People make the wrong decisions again. More vanity again. And then the remnant is more fragmented every time. Just each time the remnant stops even looking like itself. More and more pale, or the faces have crossbred with other people. The core is still the same, just like I said, the Y chromosome, the nuclear DNA is still the same by and large, but the mitochondrial DNA mutates a lot easier. So the shell, the exterior of the nucleus, that can all mutate and look a certain way. The sperm is like the egg is also part of the nucleus. That's nuclear DNA, the egg and the sperm. And then they merge, and then you have you have a shell basically, which is like the body, and that could be mutated, but the core stays the same. The Y chromosome stays the same. The X chromosome even stays the same, but the mitochondrial DNA can be mutated, so people can all look different. And now the remnant is starting to change. It's being mutated. You see all these mutants in the world. That's showing you that the mitochondrial DNA has been mutated heavily, to where you got like a distinct alteration in that, and then you sequester the offspring of those people, and then that creates its own faction where you breed a certain look. You'd be like, I'm Korean, I'm Chinese, I'm whatever. Though that's all like those mutants are an extension of like a sharp change in the remnant somewhere, and then it branches off into a deeper mutation. And so, just looking at the reset, it's like, we're working with what we got. The remnant is what it is. The people that are aware, the people that want to be autotrophic and grow their own food and be their own generators and learn how to use, how to apply their will and use what's around them instead of being used by what's around them and forfeiting their will. So, you look at it, the whole campaign, it's a massive terror campaign in the region. They toppled Assad. It's like shortly after they toppled Assad, that's how it don't matter who's president. Biden was president, Assad goes down, and that's the alley-oop. Like, all right, now the airspace is clear to bomb Iran, because that was the only thing left as a stopgap between Iran and Israel as far as the airspace goes. Because Israel has a very small air force. They have a small military. They're not very well trained. All they can do is rely on technology. It's like a parasite that just has to get into your nervous system to control your whole system. So they can just have cyber attacks. That's how they even carried out the first attack. It was through cyber attack, infiltration, Because you got to look at, again, Iran was overthrown in the 50s to where there's a lot of people in Iran, a lot of families that are suffering. They're stuck there. They're like, fuck, man, Iran was cool generations ago, but now it's fucked up. It's like radical Islam, and it's fucked up. You know what I mean? Like, and there's enough people there that like don't like the regime to where you can infiltrate them, use them against, and that's the same thing they did everywhere as far as divide and conquer. Whether you do it through the real tribes of Israel, as far as the Native Americans, the real Native Americans, the autochthonous, melanated Americans, they infiltrated the nervous system and then separated the left arm from the right arm, basically. And now you got these tribes separated, and then you can infiltrate and break down the system. So that's how they were even able to do what they did, to carry out the attack. You know what I mean? But it took 10 years to collapse Syria. It was constant ongoing war with Bashar al-Assad. And then the same thing happened with the whole region. Iraq, again, neighbor to Israel, basically. They took years to topple Iraq. And they never really, like I said, the Taliban is even stronger. They took all the weapons that was left over. They have a crazy weapons cache now, and they're big arms dealers now. And, the Taliban is stronger than ever. So it's not like they're going to go into Iran, get a regime change in a heavily mountainous country that's way bigger than Iraq, with a bigger population that is more galvanized than Iraq was. You're going to go in there and then cut the head off, create a regime change, and you think that you're going to just establish a foothold? No, it's going to be bedlam. A bunch of civilians are going to die, and it'll destabilize the whole region if this is what happens. And then you'll have a never-ending war that gets nobody anywhere. And Iran will, whatever terror group they prop up as the government will be even worse than the last one. And then the shit repeats over and over again. And you also have the prospect for a false flag to drive America into the war, and then China and Russia working with Iran to form like an Axis powers against the French, the Americans, and the British. Because again, Palestine was created by the British through the Balfour Agreement. Israel was created by the British through the Balfour Agreement. Because the Palestine Mandate, when the Ottomans lost in World War I and they were broken up, they had to pay reparations, and they gave up Palestine to Britain. Lebanon was given up to the French. So it's all the same character, same old song. And it's just like kings fighting. They're like, we need to depopulate the masses, and we need to distract them, and we need to, keep them at bay so they can't really do anything about us controlling shit. So let's have a war. Our pawns will kill each other for however many years designated, and then we'll stop the shit. Then we'll act like we're enemies. It'll be like a Cold War or whatever we got to do. But it'll be a merger, just like America merged with the Nazis through Operation Paperclip and with Japan through the fake Pearl Harbor event. So it's just a merger at the top. Just more and more merging, like Pepsi Cola, AT&T and Verizon. It's just like we have to keep this duopoly going. So people think there's a separation, but at the top it's a monopoly. And it's controlled by a parasite at the top. It's not, it's an inorganic dimension almost, or state, like that's it's part of the vamp ramp. I remember one time I was talking to a guy online. He was like, I wouldn't be surprised at the top of the vamp ramp it's just a fucking computer. And I was like, yeah, it is though, but it's an organic computer. It's just a parasite. It's just a host that's completely empty that a parasite can totally inhabit. Like, whereas like if you got some soul, or if you come from a soul bearer naturally, even in a generation or two back, there's some natural essence there that's going to maybe give you some will to break protocol. So you can't, the parasite can't fully inhabit you. It's just going to inhabit enough to where it can guide you into oblivion to where, you stay on this hamster wheel, this spiritual hamster wheel or whatever. But I think that's what we're all facing. False flag, America gets in, just like Pearl Harbor, fake event, just like Vietnam. And then there's a war where a lot of people get caught up in the meat grinder, a lot of treasure is lost, and there's a financial reset. World War II, going into World War II, Great Britain was the financial center of the world, and they still have the strongest currency. But the pound was the world reserve currency, the British pound. After World War II, is a financial reset. America becomes the world reserve currency. And then you have another miniature reset within that during Richard Nixon's presidency. I think it's 72 with the Bretton Woods. When you get the petrodollar, when America and the Saudis say we're going to make an agreement that Saudi Arabia will only accept their U.S. dollars for their oil. So that gives them, everybody has to fucking buy U.S. dollars to get oil from America and Saudi Arabia, who are, those are the biggest producers of oil in the world. So a bunch of people they couldn't just buy oil with their own currency. They had to buy dollars, which gives the dollar a false status. So now we're facing another reset, and we're facing another fake event. We're facing another fake war with real consequences, because war is theater. And that's pretty much where we're at, man. I mean, there's been a lot of distractions to get us to this point, the things that people are thinking about, man. I think if you're looking at, as far as content, political content, man, Nick Fuentes is the guy for political content. Alex Jones is compromised. He's scared of losing money, and I don't know how in bed he is with the fake Jews. Both his wives was fake Jews, so his kids is part fake Jews. He's a crypto Jew basically, and he's always working with them intimately. But you see, there's a rift in InfoWars. Like Greg Reese, he used to be heavy in InfoWars. You see, it's a rift. He's totally went a different way with his content because he's obviously opposed to what a lot of Alex says. And then the other people at InfoWars, Owen and Harrison, they see that they're completely blackpilled on Israel. You can see that there's and Alex is constantly trying to save face so he doesn't come off as anti-Israel. And so you can't go there for news. And Stu Peters, I think he's cool, but he's just young in the game. He hasn't really been fighting this enemy that long. Like Nick Fuentes has been on it for a minute. I lived it myself just on the ground level growing up in New Jersey and my mom training me. But Nick Fuentes, he's such a shut-in that he could just study this shit all day, and he'd go into like Irving Kristol and the foundation of the neocons and the connection between neoconservatism and fake Jews and all that. He spends his time going in and dissecting the fake Jews and the alliance there. So I think if anybody wants more information on this shit, Nick Fuentes is it, man. I don't agree with everything. He's a shock jock type of dude, and he says things for his base that I don't agree with, but all in all, like on that topic, geopolitical news and the fake Jews, man, she's over the target. When it comes to like domestic shit and his opinion on history, like outside the 20th century, I don't go to him for that. You know what I mean? So to me, he serves his purpose for what he does. This is fine. I don't care if we disagree or he says shit that's racist or whatever. I'm not going to him for anything outside of geopolitical news and current events on the fake Jews and history from like the 20th century on. As far as the fake Jews, and yeah, man. So That's what I would suggest if anybody wants. He's on Rumble. Elon won't give him a blue check mark on X. So legend X is suppressed. X is not a real platform. Elon, I think, has been largely quiet on the situation, and because he's a crypto Jew, you know what I mean? They're crypto fake Jew, synagogue of Satan, Canaanite, Yaphetite, um, adversarial host for the adversary, I should say. And yeah, and so you know, I mean, they not inhabiting their bodies enough to really to break protocol. They think that they're exhibiting will by vexing their spirit or whatever through vanity and pride and all that. That's not real will. That's just vexation of spirit, and they feel like a false sense of individuation through that process, but they're not. They're part of the hive, and so there's certain things they can't even bring themselves to do because there's not enough essence inhabiting the body, if any at all. And so yeah, with that said, I'm gonna accept Brandy's shit, man. Get her up in here and get Bandiel shit. Accepted it later, but it looks like it's gonna give me drama either way. A lot of there were a slave class that was a warrior class that had a certain status, just like the German Hessians. They're a slave class. They were slaves. But if you saw them, they have regalia. They would look like they have high status in society, but it's just a higher level slave. So you have a lot of Western DNA influence because when you're making a good slave, you need something that's going to be prone to vanity and more empty so that you control it. So it could be a good host for you. So you have a lot of Western DNA creeping across all of Europe. Western Asian DNA creeping across all of Europe. And Iranians are Aryans. Iran, Aryan is that's the same word. Iranian and Aryan is the same word. So if you're looking at India, for example, the Aryans invaded India. India used to be a melanated country, completely melanated, not a brown country, not a pale country like the Kamalas and the Brahmin class. The Aryans invaded India, and their slave because the Aryans were still melanated in the beginning, but they had everywhere they go when an empire or a colonizer takes over, they're bringing their slaves. So the slaves expanded further and further, and then they just took over. They took over whole regions, and it's the same thing in Iran. The slave class of uh, the descendants of Darius the Great, what have you, the slaves had an uprising and took over with the help of other slave groups and slave masters, putting them in position so that they could stay vain and stay being good lapdogs. I mean, man, I can't, I can't speak on Pharaoh, man. I think you should talk to Pharaoh yourself, bro. I don't want to speak on another guy. You know what I mean? I have my ups and downs with Pharaoh, but I don't, he's not here to defend himself, and I'm not. You should talk to him yourself. My first ever parasite purge was like, because you could say, like, it's like kind of an ongoing, the same battle. It happened from like late 2008 when I started going vegan, started transitioning, and then I want to say the end of 2007, I started to really get privy to like the sodium fluoride thing and the BT cotton and all the poisons in our environment, and then the food, high fructose corn syrup having mercury in it, all of that type of shit. That started to really hit me late 2007. After football season had ended, I had some more time on my hands, and I started getting into that. And then I had a guy I used to train with. He used to talk about like just as far as dietary stuff, how the food was fake and how it's a lot of fillers and everything. So I feel like every time because I would watch videos on YouTube. I remember watching a video on YouTube and it was like, your food is poison. And I was like, they can't be talking to me. They must be talking about like the third world or something. But then I watched the video. I'm like, oh shit, they talking to me, talking to everybody around me. And so I remember like getting that jolt that came from that, and then it's almost like a kind of sends me into like an instant fever where I'm just like trying to figure out like, all right, how deep does this go? How deep does this go? So by like into 2008, getting into 2009, I'm like, I'm really digging into Sebi deeply and Dr. Africa, Bobby Hemmett, and shit like that. And then um, I remember just getting some money and like deviating from my diet a little bit, just a little bit, not even nothing crazy, like just more processed food. It wasn't even nothing like, wasn't even like I'm eating burgers or nothing. And like I just remember just being so sick that but at that point I've already been acquainted with like the idea of fasting through Sebi and like 90 days of fasting. I was like, damn, all I can really do is fast. This is my body has now is awake and or aware enough to where it knows like this is what I need to do. So then I remember I water fasted for like 4 days and then juice fasted for like 4 days. And then from that point on, it was just impossible to really deviate far from raw foods. And then I'd say about I used to have bad acne, and then um, after I went through like a hard transition into raw, uh, I could see like the acne. It went from being like all over my body to being in one spot on my spine, and then it became a cyst. So that was like the biggest shift when that all happened, like in a matter of weeks of like going into like just like I'm only doing raw, and then it was probably like from there you're looking at like a 10-year off and on battle because I never was an addict, but besides food, and there was a power vacuum there where it's like I don't know what to do with this energy, this power. I used to spend it on food, and then I started smoking weed, and then that was like plaguing me for a while, and that would alter my diet, so it would really counter the benefits of fasting and good diet. So then I'd have like on and off, 6 months on, 6 months off, a year off of weed, a year on, 2 years off, whatever, and then um, once my dog got diagnosed with cancer and Lyme disease, because I couldn't walk for a while around my Saturn return, around 2020 into 2019, I couldn't walk for months and I couldn't get to the bottom of it. I thought I had MRSA because I fell into some contaminated water trying to save my dog. And then, I just didn't know. I thought I had MRSA. My knees swelled up because I got my open wound that had got infected. And my knees swelled up, and I'm like, oh shit, I can't. I don't know what this is. It got to be MRSA. I'm doing this blood work. They're like, no, you don't got MRSA. And I couldn't find out. Then my dog is diagnosed um, with Lyme disease and leukemia, and they were like, yeah, she got the leukemia, chronic leukemia, not like the worst form of leukemia, but it was chronic. So um, she once I found that out, and then I was like, oh, okay, I probably got Lyme. It's probably what I have. So because unless you specifically test for Lyme, you'll never know that's just what you have. You have to test for the antibody. So this all happened after like a year of just liquids. I fall into the canal. I get the infection. I can't walk, and I'm like, fuck, this is crazy. I could see my body was healing, trying to heal. You know what I mean? But it was like not. It was my knees were still weak, even months after the incident. So I'm like, fuck, man, what is this? So then, yeah, months go by. Fast forward to early fall, late summer 2020. I find out my dog has uh, leukemia and Lyme. So I was like, okay, that's what it is. I probably have Lyme. Then so I get tested. I find out I have Lyme, and then I got the cyst on my spine removed. It all happened at the same time, and then I watched my dog gradually pass away, and I saw like she, her spleen and liver were inflamed, from the Lyme or chronic leukemia, what have you. And I was like, oh shit, I'm watching what I'm headed for, the death that I'm headed for if I'm not careful. And so it gave me a lot of insight on what I was facing inside myself because I feel like excessive eating or eating foods that are too hot or too cold, um, whether it's temperature hot or cold, or whether it's dampness, like we're talking about TCM type of damp foods, or like overly fiery foods, all of that interferes with the spleen, and the spleen is like a bank of blood for your immune system. So I'm just looking at, I'm just looking at the way I'm consuming things. I'm like, oh shit, my spleen and my liver are going through the same shit she was going through. It's just like, I'm just a bigger mammal, and we had the same parasite basically. So after I got the cyst removed, I feel like it was like really emotional, like the emotional side, because I got the physical nest of parasites removed, but I hadn't like really calibrated my emotions. It's like I bypassed there instead of like going through the process. Like I think if I didn't get that removed, for one, my Instagram would still exist because the day I got the surgery scheduled, my Instagram got deleted without warning. So for one, I think my Instagram, my original one, would still exist, and I think my dog would have lived longer. She still have died, but she would have lived longer if I didn't cut the parasite out of me because we're linked. Me and her are linked. So it was like my digital parasite, my IG got deleted, and then my dog died. Because she was carrying a parasite that I was also carrying. And so once I removed it from me, it was like the parasite is a regulator. So once it's cut out of me, it's ultimately like kind of cut out of her. So it's not regulating her body, and so her body's starting to fail. And she she passed, and it was just like showed me this void emotionally that I had that the dog was feeling in general, and all the voids in my emotions in general, whether I was feeling with weed or bad food combinations or excessive food. I think whether it even be smoothies or whatever, it was excess was the issue. The fear of greed is fear, so that was probably my main issue. And then just slow walking it from there, I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna quit weed. That's a big thing for me. So I quit weed, 3 years ago, and a little over 3 years ago, and then it gave me enough insight on my emotions from that point where I was like, all right, I'm not going to bypass shit no more. I'm gonna just do the little shit. I'm not about to try to fucking fast while I'm smoking weed. It don't make no fucking sense. I need to do one thing at a time. You can fast though, but it's like it's all for naught. Like it's easier to not eat when you smoke weed because you've reached the toxic threshold. So your body's like, I don't want nothing. You smoke, and now you're like, I don't really want nothing now because I've already reached my limit of toxicity. So I found that weed is like such a bypass on that. I'm like, all right, once I got rid of, like, if you watch the movie Jackie Brown, Pam Grier's like, why'd you quit smoking? And he says, it's bad for my health or whatever, the guy. And she was like, did you gain 10 pounds? He was like, yeah. She's like, that's why I keep smoking because I'm going to gain 10 pounds. Your diet, I mean, your taste is going to, first of all, you're going to actually be able to taste better because your tongue isn't going to be burnt. So then your palate will be different. You have to go through the whole process of realizing the true nature of your taste drives. And that process is going to, your appetite will totally shift, you know what I mean? I think most people, if they stop smoking or stop drinking, they're going to eat like crazy. If you go to AA meetings, people be eating donuts and shit, trying to counter the fact that they want that all directly. They get it from alcohol forming food, like a slow burn of alcohol. It's like methadone for heroin addicts. So when I quit weed, I really saw where I was at. Like, I don't really want to bypass no more. My emotions and stuff. I still slip up sometimes where I'm like, I don't get high. I don't want to get high, but like, I find myself trying to bypass things when I could just deal with them while they're small before they become a calamity. you know, before like my dog dies and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, um, so I just feel like now the rest of my life is just a practice of getting better at dealing with things when they're small and just staying present. You know what I mean? I don't want to try to bypass the process none. So I haven't been as strict as I was. I feel like when I was still having a parasite nest in my body and and getting high more frequently. So now I feel like I removed the physical element of the parasite, by and large, and now it's like the parasite had programmed my body so much that it's like rewiring my system, to where it's like you get out of slavery and you don't know how to act like anything but a slave. And so now I think that's like my process that I've been in for the past, you know, 3 to 5 years, where I'm just like, all right, I see. Because like I was said, I was on liquids for a year, but about 6 months into that, I quit weed, and I was like, oh shit, I see. This is tough. This is tough emotionally, and I can see the benefits of fasting and not being high way more, being on liquids. So I was just dealing with that, and I feel like yeah, it's just a process of just not thinking like a slave. Not letting the parasite programming. It's like a stay behind network. Like when one president goes out of office, they leave a stay behind network in the bureaucracy. Whether it be Obama or whoever, they're gonna leave a bunch of people in positions, FBI agents, CIA agents, people that are loyal to them. They're not loyal to the Constitution or the country, and they just stay in there as like a sleeper cell, as a stay behind network. So it's like the same thing with the parasites. Like I cut out most of the parasite regime, but it's like a stay behind network in the sense that like my body's trained to operate like a parasite, to be emotionally parasitic, sexually parasitic, and it's like this whole process of rewiring that and like getting back to the true nature that existed before circumcision and get my umbilical cord cut is a tough process, man. That's I wouldn't want it any other way though. I wouldn't want to try to skip it though, because then I think it would set me up for a blind spot. And so that's kind of where I'm at. You know, that's how I'm even playing football or doing shit like this. Is just like I still shaking off false identity and still dealing with the scarcity that was produced by the parasite programming that I was allowing to run my system. So that's kind of where I'm at now with it. And I don't want to rush. Just want, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I don't want to be lazy is a fine line. So that's pretty much where I'm at with it, man. Let me see if this shit lets me accept it now. Still not letting me accept it. Golly, bro. There we go, huh? There we go. Hey, what's up? What's going on?
Not much. Watching you.
Yeah, I know you had some questions that we didn't get to last time, and then you had some good questions that I guess you came across.
Yeah.
Uh, recently that because you messaged me something and I was just like, oh, we might as well say that for the live. That'd be good entertainment. Entertainment.
Yeah. Um, should I just start with the questions?
Yeah, sure, sure. Let's just crank those out.
Okay. I think I'll just go in order because yeah, some of them are like pertaining to the topic that I suggested, and then some of them kind of like helped like bring more clarity around it. So yeah, I'll just go in order. Um, so I guess like the theme of all of the questions are like um, aligning with perfection in a romantic relationship so that it like results in like a really good romantic relationship, but then also like the creation, production of like great children, high quality children. Seems weird saying that, but yeah. Um, I kind of structured the questions to kind of like bring clarity around that. And the first question is there's something that I read in a book that really resonated with me, that just really stuck out to me, and it was that the fastest way to enlightenment or like relationships, like romantic relationships, are the fastest way to enlightenment, but also the most difficult way to enlightenment. So I was curious about what you thought about that. Like, I guess maybe starting with what difficulties or challenges you find the most concerning in relationships, but then also like how relationships, like romantic relationships, have like elevated or accelerated your growth, your spiritual growth.
Yeah, I think interfacing with I don't like to say opposite sex, the complementary sex. Interfacing with the complementary sex is uh, I mean that is a university in itself. Uh, that's an itinerary or a curriculum in itself that you're headed for. Anytime you interface with the complementary sex, I feel like all my relationships have been helpful in just realizing of who I am, what I'm not, who I'm not. I think that they've all been helpful in that way. Um, I don't even know what other means that you could use to really realize yourself than through connections. I think ultimately it's good to learn ancient languages and like have self practices with yourself and be able to think in another language. Um, being able to speak in another language, practice with another person. I think all of that just further enhances it. Like you find balance inside of you, you find balance with another person, and that just like a pathway for evolution. And I think that I don't know how you can really do it without like an arena, and the arena is like the relationship itself or the connection itself. You know, I mean, even if it's just a friendship or business partnership, working with complementary sex, or just alongside, I should say, rather, just working, men and women working together in different scenarios, whether it be through being lovers or being in a business or what have you. I feel like that's always going to bring out. It's going to be very revealing. So I think it was every relationship I've ever been in, even at different times, it might have felt like a waste of time or painful. They were always helpful. Looking back, it was always something I needed to do, and yeah, that's why I always say, like creation itself. If you know that true creation is going to demand that, because you're going to be working with someone else. Only way you can really work alongside someone else is you're going to have some humility to where y'all can actually unite, like your true self can unite with theirs instead of like uniting like through like a false union, really like expectation of spirit and false ability attachment. So really like I don't really know what the best remedy for realizing true virtue and realizing where you're sick and spoiled really is. I don't know what would be a better remedy than through connecting and working alongside other people, working to destroy the false self through some sort of virtuous practice.
Yeah, I agree. Like it can be really difficult, I guess, when you're like with someone because so much like feedback is coming back so like fast, and then there's like all these emotions too. There's like a lot to navigate, but then at the same time, it's like you see so much of yourself. Like I see so much of myself as well, so that's like really great, and it allows me to like evolve really quickly. I feel like. Okay, the second question is I don't really want to ask that one anymore, but maybe I'll come back to it. Um, the one after that is, oh, what do you like feel about like the idea of us being in times right now where like women need to be more like men and men need to be more like women?
Like integrating,
I
like
guess like
integrating.
balance, like yeah, like integrating like as a woman, like integrating like masculine qualities. Um, and then like yeah, same for like vice versa. Like I guess just like why that might be important if you think it's important at all, or if you like notice that that's something people could like benefit from more. Um, especially with like a lot of content around like hyper femininity and just like social media not really talking about I guess the importance of like balancing um, yeah, like the opposite, the qualities of the opposite sex within a person, and like how that can like help relationships be more successful, or just help individuals be more successful in life. Do you like have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think integration, having the flexibility to be able to embody certain tasks. I mean, certain roles. I guess you could say, like having the flexibility to do it and not feel uh, like you're dying because your false self doesn't align with that role. I think that's helpful. Having that, and to have that level of integration and that flexibility is helpful. I also, at the same time, I do feel like success for a man and success for a woman, ultimately they're the same thing, but they're not the same thing individually. I feel like so much of what people have been telling women is the success for a man. And I think that same thing with men. Um, Men objectifying themselves and being used for their sexuality or feeling that uh, uh, sexual domination and stuff like that gives them value. And just vanity, overall vanity in men, and just the lack of initiative when it comes to like pragmatism and like applying themselves to use their hands and stuff like that. I feel like men using personality to build a life, or suppose you could even call it that. I feel like that's it's not really a life. And I feel like that's like when feminine, the success for a woman. Again, you gotta look at it like a woman and a man is someone that has integrated both feminine and masculine. A female and a male are just boy and girl. Some have adult bodies, and I just feel like when that goes unchecked, that when a man is succeeding, like using his personality instead of his pragmatism. Like, I was thinking about it the other day, like, man, a man's logic and um, his skills is almost like tits and ass, to be real. Like, I think tits and ass is like attractive. It's not, I wouldn't say it's like the vagina. 'Cause, I think it's more like tits and ass. It's like, damn, this guy got skills. This guy is his logic is supreme. This is like a man seeing like nice hips and nice titties. I think it's like the same attraction, like naturally. And I feel like when a woman is attracted based off of a man's vanity and personality, that's like lesbianism. Like, and I feel like a lot of men at this point deep into feminine success and thinking that that's success for them. And I think a lot of women would rather work for a corporation and don't feel like that and think that that's actually success for a woman. They don't want to work for their family and their husband. They'd rather work for a corporation and they think that's success. So I feel like not that working for a corporation is success for a man either, but I just feel like being able to provide uh, is the man's position, and I feel like we're in a place where I feel like women look at it like they can do what men can do, which is just like being a slave in the system, and I feel like that has created it has thrown off the actual identity because now a woman is not even able to really be her whole self. Um, and then you got a lot of women that have to be single mothers because the men aren't men, they're boys. So, and then maybe the woman's father was a boy, so she don't know how to pick men. She was raised by a boy, basically, or not raised really. And so now a woman doesn't even get to really be a woman because she has to be the father and the mother at the same time. The child really kind of gets neither the mother or the father because the mom's trying to be the dad too. So she doesn't even really get to be a mom. And so now people are basically raised without a parent, without a mother and a father. They have a parent, but they don't have a mother or a father, basically. And so I think that uh, the definitions of success are plaguing the world, the species, however you want to look at it. But I do feel like, yeah, people should integrate certain things. Like, you look at different indigenous peoples, certain activities and tasks and behaviors between father and son or father and children um, might be seen as feminine in the modernized world, but I think it's just the flexibility and the integration levels that allow them to be egoless or false selfless, where they can be a whole person with their child instead of being uh, masculine or feminine. So yeah, I think that it's a long way of saying I do feel like sexual roles, not gender roles, sex roles are established just through biology. A woman's hips and a man's hips they're used for different things, and it's just picture of the beast. I guess. So success for one beast or for one body is going to be different, appear different than the success for the other, but people just got to be true to themselves and be like, look, this is success for me. This is what harmonizes my body and my existence. Whether yeah, I think getting caught up in comparison is what kills it because you know I think more you could get lost in comparison and think like, oh, this woman has it better, or this man has it better because of their situation. But it's like you never know. A man can look like he's the man, but he's just using his vanity and his personality, which is really some bitch shit. And so it's like he's not really established. He's making himself. Well, he might have like success and attraction in his lifetime, but he's setting his progeny up for failure because they'll never really be practical or have real skills. They'll be like kind of like metrosexual, to be honest, and very emotional. I think that's where we're at. And then, as far as women, they're just being taught that they don't, they can do the things that a man will do, and that will make them feel satisfied, and it will never make them feel satisfied.
Thank you. Um, the next question I have is, I, what like guidance would you give around like having good conversation? Because I feel like conversation is important when you're in relationship with someone else. So like, what are your ideas of what good conversation like looks like or sounds like, or like advice on how people can get better at conversation?
I mean, like the Tao Te Ching, it says like the greatest conversation is silent. But
Cool.
yeah. So I think I mean that's a short answer. The long answer is like conversion. You know, conversation is more so like a conversion, like um, somebody's trying to translate something from their core into words, and the other person is conversing, conversion going on. And they're like, oh, okay, this is what you mean. This is what you're trying to transmit. Okay. And I'm trying to transmit this, and then the other person converts that, and that's the conversation. Like I think that's the conversion going on, and so it's more so I guess about the effectiveness of the conversion, and you'll see that through, I guess, a person's exhibition of virtue, like true virtue, or lack thereof, will show you if they're having a bad conversation. They'll show you that they're having a bad conversation.
Thank you. My next question was, I guess about being silent with your romantic partner. Like, I feel like sometimes maybe people, or like I've been told that people really need like actual like, talking to like feel seen and like heard and whatnot. Do you feel like you could like go long periods of time in like silence with a partner? Um, yeah, I guess like what are your thoughts on that? Because I think silent retreat is like really interesting. I've like heard people talk about their experience with silent retreat. I've never really done it. I've done like being silent for maybe like 2 days in a row within community. Um, but then I've like heard like people's testimonials of like being at silent retreat for like a year, 2 years, 3 years, and them just feeling like after the first year of like silence, it was like they felt like they were really just starting to like see the benefits of being silent, like almost like detoxing from a lifetime of just like feeling like they constantly like have to like talk or just maybe not having the best relationship with talking. But then by the second year, it's like they're easing into it, and by the third year, they're like releasing the benefits of being silent. Um, so yeah, it's silent retreat, but I guess it's just like I would imagine it as like 3 weeks in silence and then like 3 days, a weekend of like talking, 3 weeks of silence. Like, do you think you could like do that in a intimate or romantic relationship? Or like, yeah, just like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that if you find other ways to share, that you can easily be silent. Like, because talking is just the process of sharing. So if you feel like if you're oversharing, then you're gonna want to like run into silence and be reclusive, and then that's just gonna create a cycle of like, oh, now I'm undersharing, and then you go into oversharing again, and then constantly back and forth between under and oversharing. So I think if you find other means of sharing while you're talking less, not at all, I don't think that you'll really miss talking as much. You know what I mean? And I feel like me personally, um, it's tough, like because I was just trained to be an entertainer. Because I feel like my mom and her relationship with my dad, I feel like she kind of instilled in me and in us as siblings that she didn't feel like I get had enough communication, or it wasn't communication, it was entertainment. She wanted to be in, and so I feel like she kind of instilled that in us that we should be entertainers. And uh, so I feel like just overused personality, and that's exhausting. And I feel like it causes you to talk more than you would naturally talk. And I think yeah, like if you're sharing though, if you have an activities that you share, you have whatever you share things that actually bring real results. Whether it's a fasting protocol or you share food or whatever it is, if you can find a way to really be considerate and really find different ways to share moments and share different things, then you won't feel the need to share so much words.
Thank you. Um, my next question is about self-interest and being interested in yourself. I've been practicing dream yoga for a few years now, and it's just like dreams are just like such a wellspring of like information about myself, and just like analyzing them like years later, contemplating them as I go through my day. I feel like it's helped me to become like more interested in myself. Um, but I'm curious about like what you think about practices like that, or just like the intention of being like more interested in yourself, and like if that's something that like you have observed or like contemplated, and like where it's taken you. Um, yeah, it's kind of an open-ended question, but yeah, self-interest.
I guess ultimately is the old adage of like you can't put on someone the airplane thing, but you can't put on someone's oxygen mask. That's on first. The others, you have to take care of you to be able to put yourself in position to take care of others. And only way you can really have like self interest or like self care is if you properly identify the likeness of the true self. Otherwise, you're going to be catering to a parasite. So just an identification process, like just identifying what reflects the true self and fully inhabiting the body to where you can, just identify what is being myself and what is being housing parasites. I think in that process, it's like it gives you a greater compass for how to apply yourself. You know what I mean? Once you realize yourself, you apply your will, and then you're helping others. And it's like the Tao Te Ching is saying, like, the more he gives to others, the wealthier he is. And it's like that's the reason that you have wealth and you have things is where you can share it or you can give it. You have skills where you can share it. And taking care of yourself is just enhancing yourself with skills and positioning yourself to where you can help other people because that's what nurtures you the most. So in that, there is no self or other.
Um, the next question I have is like it's on Saturn returns. Mine's gonna be coming up soon if it's not already here, depending I guess on like what astrology is being observed. What system of astrology is being observed, school of astrology, I don't know. But fasting during your Saturn return, um, or like, well, I had the idea of like fasting through my Saturn return, and I was wondering if maybe it would make it like if I'd get more out of it that way. I mean, I feel like I probably would, but I'm also curious about like what what do like Saturn returns entail from your experience? Because I believe you've like gone through yours already. Um, And what advice would you give for like optimizing that experience?
Yeah. What sign is Saturn in right now?
It should be in like Aries or Pisces right now. But I follow 13 signs astrology, so I don't know what it is in Western astrology.
So
I
what was
should
it?
probably study.
What was it in when you were born? What was Saturn? What sign was Saturn in when you were born?
in 13 signs astrology, it was in Aries when I was born.
So is it in Aries now?
It should be in Pisces. I should know this because I look at astrology a lot, but it
So
should be in Pisces right now. Yeah,
so
it's in Pisces.
it'll be in the next 2.5 years.
Sorry?
It will be in Aries in the next 2.5 years, based on that
Um,
school of. Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like your the Saturn return kind of starts once Saturn starts to enter the house, the zodiac that it was in when you were born. Like, it's already starting then. But obviously the degrees matter. But yeah, I feel like, man, delusion. Like I just was delusional. I feel like I still probably have like some levels of delusion. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I have pretty good clarity now, but when I'm 50, I'll probably be like, man, I was delusional when I was 35. You know what I mean? But at 35 now, looking back at pre 29 and a half, I was just delusional. And so I just think that like the less virtuous you are, the more delusional you're gonna be when that hammer comes down. Like once you get I think it's a good opportunity to clean out your closet and fast detox. That's what I did a lot during that period. So I had a lot of detox symptoms from that and following that from that period of time. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I think if you go into it and you're not detoxing, it's really really a problem. But um, at the same time, I feel like fasting follows virtue. Like virtue, and creation go hand in hand. So if you're being virtuous, you're going to be experiencing creation, and creation is going to satiate you and curb your appetite, and you're going to be detoxing a lot more. Um, so I feel like I would have I would have focused more on just being more virtuous and being more honest to myself and others, and just applying myself. And if I think about it now, like the things that would have set me up for a better Saturn return, yeah, I would have just been way more practical with my 20s. Not to blame nobody, but I really didn't have no guidance. And then at the same time, I had a lot of strength, so I don't know if I would have took the guidance anyway, because I was just able to power through shit and bypass it because I was very strong. And to my own detriment, I used the strength because every weakness is a misused strength. So I was deluded because I thought I could just continue to do that. It's like you just think you're going to be 25, 26, 28, 29 forever. And I think the only way to curb the growing pains is just through virtue and the idea of yourself to where you just whittle away at your personality more and more, and you forge yourself. And yeah, the only means for doing that is just applying virtue and just experience and create and, and detoxing and fasting. But the only way you can really do that is through humility. And the less humble you are, the more, it's like the opposite of humility is loftiness. I think I was just really lofty. I didn't really have no foundation. I was like developing it and like storing it rather. And I guess I wasn't put in a situation that I couldn't endure. Everything I guess was what it needed to be based on my level or of virtue or lack thereof. So you go through a painful Saturn return, I think that it's the medicine that you needed. I see it a lot when I look at people's Saturn returns. I'm like, man, you are delusional. No one can tell you. No one can tell you that you're delusional because you're in it. You're delusional. You know what I mean? It's like you're crazy. You can't. You can't. Right? You don't recognize it because you're looking at life from a crazy perspective. And like, I think, yeah, like wherever you can start to recognize delusion in your life and loftiness without that doesn't have foundation or roots, um, you can identify that, then you'll have a better Saturn return.
Oh, thank you. Um, the next question I have is, so a few years ago, you, I think, shared a video, about like what was happening with the Earth's like, spiritual body, something kind of like that. And one part of it was kind of speaking about how like energy from the North Pole would be like flowing downwards around like over the West Coast. Um, I'm just curious if that energy is still flowing down or not.
I mean, it's the magnetic north, and the winds come down from the west to the east. That's why people say Harp is there to like scramble the energy. So I think naturally you're probably always going to get like a refreshing energy coming from the pole.
Mhm. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Thank you. The next question is, um, your advice for cultivating a relationship with sincerity in your spiritual practice. So, like, um, I guess I'm curious about like what you think about sincerity and like how to like bring that into your practices and into your life. Mm, yeah, yeah, it's kind of open ended, but yeah, sincerity.
Yeah, sincerity brings clarity, and clarity brings sincerity. Man, you have to really recognize your true self, and like what's in that process, you recognize what you really care about and your purpose, and everything that aligns with that. I think it allows you to be sincere if you can see that clearly. If you can't see that clearly, then it's a little easier to lie to yourself and others. It's blind to that, to yourself and your purpose. So, like, you asking for like a practice, or like, how do you recognize, like, oh, I'm being sincere?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking like I chant mantra, and I felt like one of the side effects of chanting mantra is that like you notice like sincerity more in your voice, like or when you're being insincere, like you can kind of hear it a little bit better. Um, and I read that halfway through my practice, like my music practice, and then I started like observing it more. A big part of it is like observing the silence when I'm chanting mantra, and just like from silence to when I'm like going to speak, and just like the nuances of that like helps a lot. But I guess I was just wondering like how I can also like detect that in my practices, but maybe like, or for example, for like fasting too. Um, but maybe fasting itself is kind of like observing like my silence. Because when I do fast, I feel like I notice more of who I am. And then I guess that's sincerity when I'm constantly trying to like align with that, like noticing it, aligning with it, appreciating it. And yeah. trying to think of an actual example, but I can't really think of one.
Yeah, I think, man, when you fully inhabit your body, like you said, like you can see it in your voice. Like if you're just talking from the mat, if you're talking from your whole body, if your breath is full and you're using your whole body to communicate, to talk and stuff, then you can see when you're being sincere. Um, you kind of got to recognize like your ulterior motives or like your attachments that kind of create those ulterior motives, like the things that you're prone to, your drive, like your thinking drive, like can interfere with your sincerity. That you might not need to eat, but you just want to taste something, or you want to go to a place that reminds you of a good time or something, and that blocks your sincerity. It's, I think it just the less you're inhabiting your body, the more you're just like a routine, and then it's harder to be sincere because you're not really present. You're not really inhabiting the whole body and like really engaging with life, like breath to breath. It's more like autopilot, and there's no real depth to saying or doing because it's mechanical at that point. Sincerity requires like tapping into your core, real depth, tough love and all of that type of stuff comes out of that. I think you can't do that being superficial and mechanical. You got to really be inhabiting your whole system.
Thank you. Um, I'm curious about what you think about like if two people like meet and they were like meant to be together, for example, like the idea of like as soon as they meet, their future child is like being created or like being formed, like the energy is like I don't know, coming around them and like influencing them to like make decisions or like make moves that will like result in the child being birthed. I guess maybe in a way that that child wants to be birthed or whatnot. Um, do you believe in that? And if so, like, what would you say about like leaving that space in a relationship for the child? Like for me, it's like what comes to mind is like renunciation and just like because humans are so like big, so I feel like my first intuition would be to like let go of as much as I can and then also like have this gentle gaze on the fact that there's like that whatever relationship I'm in could result in the creation of like a human being. Um and just yeah, kind of like constantly like balancing those energies, that energy, that awareness, um, almost like creating through creation through negation. Um, yeah, just
Yeah.
like releasing for this entity that's like here that I can't really like see right now. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more so just like recognition or realizing what's just always been there. Um, Kind of like the Tao Te Ching, and he was like the master realizes what has always been. I think that more so what the process is when you meet somebody that you're going to create with. I think you're like there's like a connective tissue or like a web of that connects people, whether it be through common ancestors or through uh, the life spectrum. Different grades of the life spectrum. Different portals, and like there's you can look at it like it's a joint or whatever, however you want to look at it. Like people are kind of like part of a collective body, and um, the more you inhabit your body, the more I feel like you see like the cell that is you that you live in, and the seed or whatever that is you that you live in, and then I think you can start to recognize what's around you, what's and how things relate. The dynamic. You meet somebody and you can tell like we're going to create we're going to create this on this scale or this magnitude, and this this child, this being. It's not a child; it's a being that's already been there. It's like an eternal being. If it's a soul, so like it's already there. It's already been there, and you're just more so like the process of like getting to know each other is like it's not like you're building chemistry. You realizing what has always been there, like what the connective tissue is, or whatever the connective faculty is that this child embodies, this being embodies. So I think like more like that, like it's a rearrival. It's, it's back for the first time type of thing. Like we're just like um, just seeing the moment, the eternal moment clearly. You got the clarity to see like this is how we relate. We relate because we are facilitators for this being, and this is the connection that has always been like an eternal connection. Like if your mom passes away, the connection is there, yeah. And all of your whole family passes away, the connection is still there. That web or whatever can become physical again. Somebody's always going to anchor that web on a physical level, and the beings will always have their relationship or their connection points. And if you realize that type of shit early on, and it can like in the meeting, you meet each other. You're like, okay, I realize the dynamics of this connection that's between us, and then then you can like get rid of the clutter a lot easier. A lot of times, I think people just take stuff for granted. They have like immense euphoria, and these things are going to be there if that type of connection is there. You're going to get euphoria, these things, but and like those things are going to happen. But like if they become a focal point, then you're not really seeing things for what they are, and you're going to just take stuff for granted, and then you have a kid, legitimately, you have it out of wedlock, or you're just gonna have a kid without really being unified or realizing how unified you are, and then you take things for granted, and then people get hurt. The child experiences pain that they didn't really experience. The realization of the union. I think that's more so what the creative process is like seeing what has always been, and working with that. Um, you have an ability to bring a certain being, a certain basket of beings through if they're within your wavelength, and you know, or you could just go the other route and just fragment and create like a clone of yourself, a fragmented version, and kind of restart the clock of the same situation. It's just more moving parts now. Sounds like more disjointed parts that like have to be unified. It creates like it seems like a ripple into the whole system because the system has to compensate that to try to create unity and the whole process. I mean, you see it in like those events where you see people that are like twins that marry twins, stuff like that, and then they'll have children on the same day and stuff like that. Like this is just fragmentation. You know what I mean? This is like obviously clear fragmentation, but it doesn't even have to be that obvious. The fragmentation, you know. How many people are fucking named John? You know what I mean, or some shit like that. How many people got these names? It's like how many people got certain trauma bonds? It's all like due to the fragmentation of people going through like you know program running their system instead of them being their true self and coming into the world their whole self as much as possible. And then you become 1 year old and you inhabit that body as much as possible and you can be your whole self. And then two, three, four, five, and you get 29, and you return. Your prefrontal lobe fully matured. And you now fully express your physical self. You can express your metaphysical self physically, fully. And you bring your whole self along the way. 1 year old you was the whole you that you could be all the way up to adulthood or full maturity, rather. And you maintain that continuity.
Thank you. Um, my next question is, I guess, the idea that like masters or people who are very wise, very like who've really like mastered themselves, needing vices to like stay grounded. Um, do you like believe that there's some truth to that idea? I feel like you're very wise. Like how do you stay grounded? Um, yeah, I'll just start with that for the question.
Well, I think you got to always incorporate or integrate the earth element while you're in the earth experience. It can't be neglected. So I think you got to embrace and like alchemically um, organize your life where the earth element is honored and you know respected and utilized. You know, it's got to be some sort of relationship to that element that has to be honored to the earth element. You think about it like in the super advanced civilizations, like every element was still very necessary. The relationship or the connection, the way things are being utilized might be different. You still need you still need water. You still need earth, you still need air, you still need fire. Maybe you're not using fire to cook your food and da 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 da. And maybe you're not using water to drink water because you're breatharian. You know, maybe whatever. Maybe however, whatever grade of experience you're in, you might not be using the elements the way we use them now, but you're going to be using them. You know, you use a hydrogen fusion, and you need heavy water or different types of water, or you need grounding element. I mean, we're thinking about electricity in general. Like, if you have a worldwide civilization where you're using ethereal energy, electrical energy, you're going to have some. So you have to have some sort of ground rods throughout the system. There has to be a grounding element, and whether you're eating shit to make you grounded, or if you just uh, using the grounding element in other ways until you eat less and less until you get up in age where you just require less and less until you don't need that. Really, it's very minuscule what you need, and you can get it in a lighter way, the earth element in a lighter way. Then that's the way you do it. But I think you're gonna have to stay grounded to have a relationship with the earth element one way or another, or you're gonna have imbalance.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I'll move on to my next question, um, which is working with tension in the body and the universe. Yeah, I've always just been very curious about tension because I feel like if I'm like really kind of nothing, I feel like tension kind of is what allows me to like exist and be on the planet and like interact. Like it kind of brings like a dynamic kind of quality into my life. So I was just curious about. Sorry if it's hard to hear me speak. I'm like, it's hard to pronounce things because I don't really talk. So when I do talk, I'm like, ah. But yeah, so if you need me to repeat anything at any time, I won't be offended. Because I can like barely even understand what I'm saying sometimes with the pronunciation. But working with tension in the body, like how does this sort of like work in like creating our reality? And I guess it also ties into like the idea of like pressure or my questions around like pressure in the universe and whatnot. Like when I'm doing breath work, it's like I'm moving the pressure and it just, I feel like my whole environment feels it and shapeshifts like with me. And then that makes me think like, oh my goodness, like am I also influencing the universe too as well? I'm just like relating to tension and pressure in my life differently. I guess like, yeah, like to what extent have you observed that being like real in reality, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, tension is necessary. I mean, you can look at like a tension bridge, like, if the tension is going off, then a bridge will collapse. Like, you got different gradients in your organs, you know what I mean? Like, your kidneys are a gradient. Like, you have a gradient is determined. Like, it's like if you don't have the correct elasticity in your digestive organ, then the pressure will be thrown off. Like, you need to have that tension. It's going to give you feedback. So it's like the tension just has to be appropriated. It can't be exhausted. Um, ultimately, like your plasma or your being is like suspended in a physical being. It's like something that makes that possible. Um, so I don't think there's a problem with tension itself. It's just like when the pressure is not right, and if it's too much tension, then something's going to snap. If it's not enough tension, then the flow is going to be impeded either way. You're gonna have some sort of a lack of flow. If you have a lot of bloating and inflammation, and you're if you get atrophy that follows that after just breaking down from that excess tension, then things become soggy, and then the flow is just ruined. So the tension just has to be correct. I don't think tension itself is anything wrong with tension itself. There's a time for being safe, and there's a time for being in danger.
Yeah. Um, Thank you. My next question is your thoughts on gravity. I remember I heard you speak briefly about it in a video, but I can't find the video anymore. But I'm just curious about, yeah, like your thoughts on gravity in general, and relating to gravity. I've been studying the Alexander technique. It's like this technique for just doing practices with the body to be aware of like gravity and just having a better relationship with gravity, which is like really cool. And when I like practice it, I feel like there's so many things that were stressing me out that I didn't even realize were stressing me out. Like simple, like small things. And especially with fasting, it's like I notice more like if I get up the wrong way and there's tension in my back, like there's a bit of pain in my back from like getting up like just unmindfully, then it's like my brain kind of gets a bit scared and then I'm like in a bad mood. But if I address it and I'm like, I'm in, like I feel some pain because I did this and I know it's gonna go away in like 5 minutes, and it like changes that whole like course of emotional flow. So I just find it like really interesting, like even like walking down the street, like just knowing different, I guess, ideas about how to relate to my body in relation to gravity. Then it's like I'll be walking, and if I was walking one way, I might feel like, oh, I have like anxiety, and just kind of like picking out like negative things versus just making a change. And then like the whole experience of like walking down the like the walkway just like is much more pleasant, or not even just necessarily pleasant, just much more interesting. Um, yeah, I'm just curious about your explorations with gravity and relating to gravity. It doesn't even have to be like your body or anything like that. It's, I guess like whatever comes to mind for you.
Yeah, gravity is just attachment. Ultimately, yeah, you got an attachment to your body. Uh, the more guilt and fear that you harbor, the more attachment, the more dense the body becomes. Like they say, like guilty feet don't dance. It's just there's a heaviness with attachment that throws off rhythms and um, just makes you more and more dense, more and more attached, and then it's a snowball effect. I feel like. So, yeah, I think gravity itself is attachment. You're talking about quantum gravity attachment. You're talking about physical gravity. It's not really something quantum gravity. You know, you just become attached to activity or whatever. You have a physical attachment to the body, then and if you have an identity within the body, a persona that you're attached to, then the body becomes heavy because it just was the chain of course. If you have attachment, you're gonna you're gonna blow and retain water because you have to feel that persona, and the persona is not the true self. So it's gonna be exhausting. So you're gonna be out of energy. So you're gonna do more. You're gonna get more. You're gonna experience gravity. Your relationship with gravity is gonna be a heavy one. Your density is gonna you're gonna have a heavier life, a hard life, not as technical. And you are um, you have less attachment, then you'll walk softly. Like you're supposed to walk like your feet are kissing the ground. I think it's not possible with a lot of attachment. I think you're gonna always walk with guilt. Dancing will be more difficult. Grace will be more difficult when you are a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like love is attachment, and love is mostly fear. As far as what people true love exists, but I mean, like it wouldn't. Falling in love is kind of putting it in the attachment language and really just fear. Um, and the fear creates hesitation and um, and knee jerk reactions that end up creating just like compounded guilt is like compounded, and it just attachment just grows, and you're just more.
Thank you. Um, yeah, I feel like from listening to what you said, I feel like the Alexander technique or just like being more aware of like the teachings in it. Maybe like why I'm so attracted to it is because it's like by relating to my body in a way that complements the way that it was created, it allows me to like release attachments, like feeling like just being super aware of my body. Like I'm working with it in a way that again complements the way that it was created, so then I don't have to be so attached to it, even on a subconscious level. So
Yeah.
that's a really interesting way to look at it. Thank you. Um, my next question is, I guess, like um, the impact of your external environment or like my external environment and like sensing when it's a good time to like leave. Um, like all the animals and stuff, like if they sense that an earthquake or some kind of disaster is going to happen, like they flee. But then with humans, we have like apartments and like leases and like all of these attachments and stuff. So maybe we can't always um, act on our intuition as like quickly as possible. But I feel like sometimes it even becomes like too like yeah, I don't know. I guess like I'm just wondering like what your advice would be on like sensing when your environment maybe might be inhibiting your growth or like your well-being enough that it might be time to like leave. Um, like for me, like I'm in a small town, which is nice, but I'm in kind of like a busier part of the small town, and just the sounds of like traffic and construction, I feel like at the level of like that I want to work with fasting, I think a part of me is a bit fearful that maybe my environment might become like a new type of junk food for me, like just the vibrations. Um, but I also don't know like if maybe like I feel like I've been so separated from that like type of intuition. Um, just like feeling like, oh, I need to be like responsible and like stay where I am because on the surface it seems like a really great setup that I'm in. But yeah, but my intuition is like maybe I should try to go out into nature. Um, I don't know if you've like had that same feeling before and like how like you've like navigated it or if you have advice around that.
Like getting more nature to counter.
I guess to relate to stimulation that just knows itself more versus like this very fragmented stimulation or very synthetic type of stimulation that
Yeah,
I'm experiencing in an urban environment.
yeah. I feel like when you're in a more environment that's giving you natural feedback, like living feedback, like not like giving you radiation, but getting actual radiance, like organic radiance. And when you live in it and you become immersed in it and you start to wake up and have a circadian rhythm with the environment, um, I think it just kind of auto corrects a lot of things in your life, and then you can kind of like trying to think of the word to you can kind of like disseminate whatever I guess I don't want to say toxic vibration, but whatever like kind of like hiccups or hitches in your vibration, different things that have thrown off your rhythm, like all of that, it can kind of get like grounded out into the environment and it's like autocorrect. Your whole system will start to autocorrect. I feel like if you live in nature, it's impossible to not that unless you're radiating yourself and eating improperly or like succumbing to some kind of addiction. I think that it's obvious how wasteful you're being when you're living in nature consistently. You're like, oh man, I could have used these hours of sunshine to do this and do that, and I'm wasting energy. I got the lights on. I should have just got up earlier and read a book then. Now I'm reading a book at night, or whatever it is. Like, I feel like nature kind of shows you how much waste that you have, and then the longer you stay in it and become part of the rhythm, you kind of round out all of that misalignment and those.
Um,
Let's do
thank
two
you.
more.
Okay. Sorry, just a moment. Let me choose like the most best ones that I really want to ask. Um, okay, the first one that I would like to ask is um, the idea of like exploring the universe within a relationship. So like almost using like a relationship as like an observatorium. I don't know how to pronounce that. An observatorium, kind of like I guess that thing that you'd be inside to like look at the stars in a very like, detailed way. Um, yeah, like I guess that's what I think of when I think of the idea of like becoming one and just like, learning to be very content with not even like content like you're giving up anything, but you're kind of are just using, I guess, the power of discrimination to be like, okay, I'm unifying with this person, we're having this relationship. And then from there, that's how we're gonna like grow and make observations. So that's where we're gonna be making our observations from about the world and like growing from. Um, I guess like, do you feel like that could be like becoming one or like unifying? Um, I guess it's yeah, like it's like the same idea of like relationships being like the fastest way to enlightenment, but also like the most difficult. Um, like just yeah, being so close to one person that you almost become like one person in some ways, and then just exploring the universe and through that relationship, like as a vessel, like the relationship as a vessel, because as a ship to explore the universe. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, once you recognize that you need a point of reference, so like you gotta know point A to get to point B. So once you realize that you you realize the connection point with someone else, it's like you can see how it relates to the overall universal body. You start to map out like it's like a Grand Theft Auto game, almost. So you start to map out the different connection points and how they relate to the connection points in your own body. You know, and you got to go through the cycles. I feel like you have a connection, a relationship with someone. You go through a year cycle or whatever. You go through 2.5 years. You're going through a Saturn, change in sign cycle. Um, you're going through a bunch of cycles together, and then I feel like you can kind of see how these different things relate to your universe or whatever, and how you relate to one another. And things like that.
Yeah, because I guess like you can see infinity in like everything. So like you definitely could in a relationship too.
Yeah, you have to see how it relates to you. You have to see like um, if you have elements within you. You can see a color because the color is in your eye. You know what I mean? The cones of your eyes in your eye have this color, so they can recognize the color around you. So it's like you have to see the connection inside of yourself to see how it relates to be able to really interface with something, to really realize like the connection, the interconnection with it. If you have no virtue in you, you don't see virtue. If you have no patience, you don't see faith. If you have no, if you only see wickedness, it's just wickedness. And
Thank you. And then my last question. Um, I want to ask, sorry, just one moment. I guess I'll ask this question. Do you have an idea of like, no, actually not that question. Okay, I'm just gonna ask the fun question. I asked this to, like all of my like close friends because we're all into this kind of stuff, and I'm like really curious about other people's ideas and like getting feedback. But if you don't really have an opinion on this, then that's fine too. I guess most of the friends I asked are females, so it's kind of like something that's always on our mind, or the females that I like find myself getting like close to. But it's, do you have any like early childhood philosophy practices that really stand out to you that like Waldorf or like Montessori or anything like that, or not even like it can also just be like things like teaching babies like ASL so that they can like learn to like work with their hands and like speed up the like development of their brain. Yeah, just trying to collect, I guess, as much like ideas as possible.
Like a philosophy, like of how to raise a child.
Yeah, or just how to optimize like those first like early years, up into like their teenage years. Or even if you have ideas for like teenage years too as well, that would be really helpful too. I lost my pen, like oh well.
Yeah, I mean, any kind of challenge. I mean, everything is meant to be on time. Obviously, you're not going to teach 2 months old French or nothing. I mean, they will kind of learn it a little bit, like, just through osmosis. And I feel like you just got to challenge it, challenge them and create boundaries, create like healthy boundaries, so they know that, you know, um, that's it. Because anything that doesn't have a boundary will go try to find it. And if you're not giving them a boundary, again, that's why I think fathers are important. Um, Boundaries, like the boundary. Because the child will go and find boundaries, and rather get that sorted at home before they do. So I think if you're giving a kid boundary and they see the benefits of it, like how like the boundary is like it gives you a different kind of freedom. It's a freedom from chaos. Like if you realize like this boundary is here for my protection. It's like a hedge of protection, and my dad and my mom they care about me, so they're giving me a boundary. Then they feel good. You're not giving them boundary, and you're not giving them challenges, and I think that they just need to know that they need to recognize the care. You you can recognize that there's a lot of care uh, being being displayed, being given to them, and you know, and then I think that they can meet the challenges differently. If it's just mechanical, then I think that everything will be mechanical. They won't really meet their challenges. It will all be mechanical. It's just like you're doing things to finish them instead of doing things uh, realize the process, and then use that in your life, in your whole lifetime. I think that boundaries and balance, however, and they just got to be on time based on the different maturity stages of the child. You want to challenge them as much as possible, but it all has to have there has to be care and presence involved. It shouldn't be mechanical and just like kind of it almost becomes a distraction that way if the challenges are just filling up the space. Then they don't know how to stop. They don't know how to just be if it's just bombardment instead of challenge.
Yeah, I think that's super important too. There's, I think, actually my favorite early childhood like philosophy is Pikler, Emmy Pikler, and a lot of it is just like taking infants and basically like creating like microcosms or like incubations to like teach them things specifically around boundaries, like having them like putting two tables together, having them walk from one table or crawl from one table over to the other table, and then like separating those tables more and kind of like letting them feel into their intuition and notice like when the gap is too far for them to like go over onto the next table. And I feel like things like that are really interesting to me because I feel like I could what's the word, like accelerate their learning in that area so that by the time they are like walking and talking and able to like learn more like lessons the ways that we learn them through like life experience, it's like they've already kind of gotten the basics down and they aren't so annoying when they're older, quote unquote annoying, but I guess in other words, like I can just do more with them when they get older because we've already like kind of gone through those basics and not having to exert like too much extra energy teaching them stuff that I guess could be taught in like other ways, like just optimizing their early childhood years.
Yeah, I mean, you just
Anyways,
want,
thank you.
yeah, I
Oh,
mean, you just want, you just want to expose them to like the nature of reality and the laws of reality, like so that they can, like, I feel like a lot of the times people are learning through failure. I think that definitely helps. But like when you learn, like if God shows you something, or you see, like, okay, I see the results of why this is beneficial, why this helps me and helps me. I can recognize that. Then you're learning from success, and that's a whole nother level of learning. I feel like than just learning from failure. Learning from failure has its place, and I think it's valuable. But I feel like once you learn, as a you know, that there's an order. And when you respect the order, good things happen or like beneficial things happen to you and to the collective. Then I feel like at that point, then you can start to see the connection or, your actual connection or relationship to the creator, originator, and then you like, okay, damn, I was given this father that brought this care and showed me like, this is why you do this. This is why you have these principles. This is why you don't lie. This is why you have, exhibit these virtues and the use of the opportunities that you have, like so then you start to see the learning and success, and then I think in that process you become really grateful for being given a father and for your connection to the originator creator. You know what I mean? Same thing with your mom too. I just feel like um, that those like honor your mother and your father. Thy days will be long upon the land. It's like one of the Ten Commandments or one of the main mitzvahs. So like it's like you have this relationship, this connection to a father and a mother, and mm, maybe the main. It's not the main. It's one of the main ways to communicate and connect with the kid. But, I think that you got to show them the nature of reality, and you have to show them order. And through order, there's boundaries, and through the boundaries, you see how things are connected, and you see the patterns of life. Like, you look at the pattern of creation, and you recite it, and you're gonna find out that both those things bring. Most people just learn it from failure, but if you learn how from success, you're gonna experience failure too. But if you get the formula early, I think then recognize the pattern of creation early. There's no unlearning it at that point. There's no undoing that. Then now it's just perpetual. Grows that perspective, that realization grows.
thank you.
But yeah, just let me know if you want to do one again, man. I have some time Tuesday or Wednesday night. Definitely have
Okay,
Friday night. Let me know.
okay.
All right. Thank you, B. Thank you for your time, man. Have a good night. And It'll be on the Patreon, patreon.com/. And thank you all for your time.
Yes, thank you too.
Thanks. Peace. One.